As a person pursuing acting in the US, I wanted to ask Anna, is there a big difference in the characters in American and English actresses? And if so, how? And what has your experience been like?
That's a really interesting question about American and English actresses. I mean, I've interviewed Sigourney Weaver, Linda Hamilton, Julianne Moore, and then a host of British actresses. I don't think there's a massive difference. I think the main difference would be between Hollywood and indie. So indie people tend to be a little bit more forthright at the beginning of their careers because they don't have the pressures that the Hollywood actresses have to not reveal their private life. And particularly young people, I think, of either American or English or French or whatever origin, can be a little bit more open because they're used to growing up with the social media spotlight right on them.
You've worked with big publications and networks like BBC, Elle, and Time Out, and I'd love to know how you got your foot in the door, because sometimes that's the hardest part. Any advice you can give would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
So I got my foot in the door by working really hard. I mean, it's an old-fashioned answer, but it's true. After journalism school, I became editor of various publications, an assistant editor, and I took on the film reviews. And once I went freelance, having decided that's what I wanted to do, I worked really, really hard. I made sure my work was of the highest quality. I approached at least 10 editors a day. That was my rule for myself, because the more you ask, the more likely you are to get a yes. And I took an active part in the Critics Circle. That was something I wanted to do, but it was a great community kind of building experience for me. And I've gone on to be president of the Critics Circle. And I think there I met a lot of people who have helped me, and I've helped them in their careers. You know, we're all in this together.
Do you have any tips or tricks that you use to make the people you interview feel more comfortable?
I think it's really important to make your interviewee comfortable. If you can tell them what to expect, that's really helpful. If you're in the room with them, it's great if you're able to comment on something in the room, on what they're wearing. They'll probably do the same with you. Have a little jokey chat. It's nice to set a tone of voice that makes it clear that you can have a laugh, because who wants to read a very serious interview in terms of Hollywood actresses and such like. I think on the phone it can be more difficult when we record down the line for Girls on Film, and on stage it's wonderful to have some time before you go on stage to just have a quick exchange to establish a rapport. So being super friendly, super nice, researching everything about this person so you can find common ground is really helpful.
In a world full of influencers and bloggers, how do you make your voice heard as a journalist, as an expert in the media industry?
It's kind of more difficult and less difficult to make your voice heard since the advent of social media, which was just at the beginning of me really working in film. So I think prior to that it was easier because you didn't have all these millions of voices competing with you. But at the same time, social media can be used to your advantage, as you well know. So obviously it's a great way, if you have got a specialism, to make yourself known and make yourself heard. So I think the key for me in journalism was to find something that I excelled in, that I was enthusiastic about, and that was my area. So not just film for me, but for women in film. And I also talk a lot about awards season. So if people know that you're good on certain topics, they're more likely to hire you, obviously, to go on the TV and radio, or to contribute to a publication or whatever it is that is your goal. And mine is a mixture of all those really, and it's been a joy to kind of achieve those things across all media. But certainly the podcast Girls on Film has helped me to promote a specialism, even though it was launched as an absolute labour of love and a passion project. What's great about it as a sideline is that it's been a way to establish myself further as an expert on women in film and as a spokesperson, and it's just wonderful to take part in books like Generation W and to speak to people like yourself to hopefully encourage people and build a sense of community. So thank you.
As we know that you are a boss babe yourself, so we would love to know what are the traits every girl boss should have.
Female boss, that's a really interesting way of putting it, and of course I know why you asked that. We're not living in an equal society just yet, but in theory the same traits should apply to a good boss. And I'm not sure who I am to say what that would be, but what I found very useful in things like the Critics Circle is being approachable, being empathetic, being inclusive as much as possible, trying to ring the changes, being open to developments and change, helping other people to achieve their best potential is obviously a huge part. I'm not saying I've got all this right, but I'm trying. And I think also time management is hugely important as a boss. I think when you're running meetings, that's extremely important. And you need to be very aware of how much time it takes to do certain things and to achieve things, and to be realistic about that, and to know when to quit and to know when to forge ahead. But it's a long answer to your question. But I think female bosses as well, for myself, I think have a responsibility to bring other people up, not just women and men, but people of colour and people with different abilities. I think it's important that we're as inclusive as possible, personally, and I think that's been part of our remit at the Critics Circle. We've still got a long way to go, so best of luck with whatever you decide to do.
As an American, I don't know much about the UK's film industry, but I do know ours is heavily owned and operated by men. What advice would you give to women struggling to break out in this industry?
I think in the UK, obviously, it's still very male dominated as well. And I would say an important aspect is to work with people who you believe in, who share your goals, to form a support network. This is something that Amma Asante talked about on the latest Girls on Film vodcast with the BFI's YouTube. She's a tremendous director, as you know, and she had lots to say about this. I would check that out because she said it better than I could, but she basically said knock on a lot of doors, which I said too, but also work with people that you have common ground with, and find somebody who's a great editor if you're a great writer, who's a great director if you're a great producer. Work together, build experience together, ask people. Just, she said the more no's you get, the more likely you are to get a yes, so best of luck.